Thanks for watching the Abundant Life Family Podcast. I'm Bill.
And I'm Jen.
We're the Hildebrands, and we're helping to build families that last. Today, we're talking with Dr. Hoback about disabilities and how we can help our kids through those disabilities. Well, Kathy, it's very good to have you with us today on our podcast, and I really appreciate the experience and wisdom that you bring to us. First of all, tell us a little bit about your own family.
Okay, so I recently moved to the Kansas City area from Washington, D.C. with my husband who got transferred here, and we've lived all over the country. We're loving Kansas City, by the way.
Right.
We really like it here. We are.
Royals fans? That's coming up.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, yeah.
So originally I'm from Springfield, Missouri. I am a mom of three, ages 26, 24, and 22. One of them moved here with us. Two of them are still in D.C., so I'm adjusting to having my baby so far away.
Yes.
But so that's my, all my family. My original family, my mom, my dad, they're all in the Southwest Missouri area, Oklahoma. So we love coming back home.
That's so incredible. I loved hearing your story last night, just telling us how you were a mom for years, and then you actually started your journey with getting your degrees. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I stayed home with my kids as just a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I had a little bit of college right after high school, married my high school sweetheart at 19, and moved to Fort Benning, Georgia, like Army wife. And when we had kids, we decided that we were going to make the sacrifice that I could stay home and raise them. And so we did that. And that really helped shape what I wanted to do in the future. So when my youngest went to preschool, I started teaching preschool. Yeah. And then I said, I think I can do this. So I went back to school. I started finishing my associates, went straight through to my bachelor's, then on to my master's in special education. And then I now have my doctorate in educational leadership.
Woo.
Dr. Mom.
Dr. Mom. Awesome. I love it.
Very good.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk about today is, first let me encourage our families. We want to help them to win, and WIN stands for walk the path, initiate God conversations, and never miss a God moment. Yeah. Walk the path, it's referring partly to the mile markers that we have. There are 10 mile markers through life, and they just help us to know where we are in the stage of life. We've talked about, that we're kind of in a similar stage where our kids are moving out, but our parents could be moving in and that kind of thing. So just the stage of life that we're in. The mile markers that we're focusing on are the middle ones, talking about preparing for middle school, rite of passage, graduating from high school, and preparing for adulthood. Those mile markers right there. Now, some families, as they continue through those mile markers, are recognizing, my kid is struggling in school. And there may be many reasons for that. And as kids mature and grow and develop, families may realize, my kid has special needs. How can I help my kid with special needs? Or they may look at their kid and say, my kid doesn't have special needs, but something's going on. How do I help this kid? Now, I know that you said your specialty is disabilities. What's the difference between disabilities and special needs?
Well, every special need is a disability. Okay. And so we have to look at the definition of disability in the law. And so the Americans with Disabilities Act spells out that a disability is anything that affects one or more major life functions. Could be walking, breathing, learning, falls in there as well. Could be speaking. All of those are disabilities. So when we look at unseen disabilities like generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar, ADHD, all of those types of things under the ADA law are all disabilities. When we think of special needs, we think of students or children with more significant needs that might need adapted programs. And so they also have a disability, but there's also a greater sense of people that have disabilities that may not be aware that there is help for them when they process through and transition through these life stages.
Now, there may be some differences from state to state. You know, people watching this may be not in Missouri, they may be in Kansas, or they could be in Washington, D.C., or wherever. Will there be some differences on the state level, but what you're talking about is on the national level as well?
Yes, so I'm talking about the federal level
Okay.
and what the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is from the 1970s, what that says is a disability. Now, each state might do things a little bit differently, but overall, we have this overarching law that protects and helps people with disabilities go through those rites of passage and transition.
Now, you were a school teacher for a
Yep,
while. I've
yep.
been a youth pastor a good part of my life, and
Yeah.
I know and recognize that families have to take initiative and get involved with their kids. Some families depend on, the school system to determine whether the kid has a disability or a special need or whatever it is. But families need to be proactive in this. How can families, let's say the kid is in elementary or high school, parents are just starting to notice something's up, but I don't know that my school is noticing. What can parents do?
Yeah.
So when you're in the public education system, right, those students would fall under a law called IDEA. So it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that goes K through 12. So they fall under this law, and in that law, the school can have the parents say, we want testing, right? So the school can go ahead and test for those learning disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD, some forms of autism, or just a specific learning disability, right? That they know there's something going on and that the student might need some help. It's important to know that under that, those school programs can be modified. A student might get a test that's longer. They might get reduced choice in their test, where instead of 5 multiple choice answers, they're only going to have 3 to choose from. That's a modification of the work. The work could be adapted. Instead of reading Romeo and Juliet in classic, Shakespeare language, they might be allowed to read a graphic novel of Romeo and Juliet. That's a modification. So that is allowed within the K-12 system. Now, when you transition from high school to college, that falls away. That IEP, the 504, that all falls away, and you fall under the different law of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But there's still help for you.
I think that's the piece that I didn't really recognize when one of our boys was moving into college. And so that would have been so helpful, to us as parents if we had known that and then began exploring that with our son.
So start earlier.
Start earlier, ask questions. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about when your kiddo is transitioning into a college. What does that mean for them?
So about the age, within an IEP cycle, about the age of 14, some states are 16, there is this process that the teacher or the administration will start going over with the parent, and that's called the transition of rights. So when a student turns 18, it's just that. Their rights transition from the parent who's been taking care of them to the student, right? So now the student is in charge of their own education from the time they turn 18.
And I remember that blew me away when our first son went to college, and I wanted to know all these things and they couldn't tell me anything. It was all, my son had to release those things. So that's
Right. It's actually
it's
a
a big-
violation of law.
it is.
So it's a violation of the FERPA law that is gives educational protections to the student. And so it's important as they reach that 14, 15, 16 age, you know, you're starting to plan what they're going to do. And if they're planning to go to college and they might have ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, things that affect their learning, but might not be as severe as like Down syndrome or a level 3 autistic student, something that's not that severe, but they still need some supports. It's important for the parent to make sure they're including the student on their educational meetings of their IEPs or their 504s, that they're making their student be an active participant in their doctor's appointments that they go to, so that the student needs to be able to understand their own disability so that then they can advocate for themselves. Because when they come to my office to talk with me at the college level, I'm not meeting with mom and dad.
Right.
The student has to be able to advocate for themselves and say, I know I need extra time on testing. I know that I can't focus and I can't concentrate when everyone's clicking away at their keyboard, right? I need a quiet environment. Now, it's important to realize that we can't modify a college course. I can't say, you know, we're all reading that Romeo and Juliet and you can read the graphic novel. College can't do that because of the accreditation process. But we can give extra time. We can give an individualized room. We could give things like copies of the teacher's notes, things like that, so that they are successful and they have access to everything on campus, just like a typical college student.
Can the kid just watch the movie?
I wish.
No,
That's what I
Bill.
needed.
No, Bill.
Okay.
I wish they could.
So what I'm hearing is, so when they're around 14, I know even as me as a mom, if I took my son to the doctor, I would do a lot of the talking. So what you're advocating is, as moms, we need to let, when the doctor's talking, turn to your child and say, you tell the doctor, so that they begin.
Make sure the child's in the room.
Yeah, make sure, and that they're responding.
That they're a part of the conversation.
Yeah, that is so interesting and so good. So that when they go to college, they know, they're self-aware, they know what to ask for. So that's so good.
Have you ever had a kid or parents who didn't want to tell their kid what's going on?
Yeah. So when I taught at the high school level, I did teach more severe students, intellectual disabilities. I did have a student that did not know he was autistic. Now, he was 17 years old, getting ready to be 18. And we were talking in our class about different needs and what everyone has needs, that everyone has different ways that they need to be, for lack of a better term, dealt with, handled, right? Some people like schedules and planning. Some people are more loose and like just fly by the seat of their pants and can do whatever, right? So we were talking how everyone has different things that they need, and that's fine. Everyone is their own individual person. We're all perfect in how God made us, right? And so everyone is like that. And so the student, I said, just like you have autism. And he was like, what? Then we're in a meeting with his parents later, and I bring up that he was autistic and that autistic students tend to have certain things that they need and things that they like schedules and planning. They don't like change. And the parents were like, we never tell him that. And he was thankful that he's like, well, that's what I have. So why I need to know about that. I need to know that this is how I learn. Oh, that's why I like doing things in a certain way. It made sense to him once he finally understood what his preferred method and preferred ways of learning were. It helped bring peace to him that he knew, oh yeah, I'm autistic. You know, so that really helped. So the parents were ending up, they thought they were helping him, but he wasn't able to voice that with them. So sometimes, you know, we have to help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So the sooner that a parent can help their child bridge that gap between a parent's knowledge of their child and them gaining their own autonomy, because that's what we want for our kids. We want them to be independent and autonomous, right?
Right.
Then the sooner they can help bridge that gap in their diagnosis of a disability, the better. That also comes from my own experience of having my youngest son is hearing impaired. And, it was him learning, hey, yeah, I may have to wear my hearing aids, or I may have to have the teacher facing me so that I can hear them better. Once he understood that, he was actually able to stop wearing his hearing aids because he learned how to compensate for that himself.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about the specific things that you do as, you're working right now at the college level and what you provide at a university level, just a little more specifically.
Okay.
And how you help students.
The first thing that you have to know that's different at the college level is a student has to self-identify. A student, when those records come from high school, we get their transcript, their grades, and what classes they took. We don't get their IEP. We don't get their 504. We don't get their behavior plan. We don't get any medical documentation that they had. So that's all we get. So if they need those supports and if they need that help, they have to self-identify by coming to an office like mine. Now, I'm at a local community college, but there's a me everywhere. At every single college campus across the United States, there is somebody working in disability services.
Wow. So that just means that as your child is getting ready to go off to college, they need to definitely be pursuing that, because you're not going to pursue them.
No, I'm not.
They have to take it, and they have to take ownership of it and
Yes.
get the help that they need.
Yeah.
That is so good. Is that all 4 years that they receive that?
Yes.
Okay.
Even into master's programs and doctorate programs.
Really?
And not just in traditional college, but also in certificate programs. So we have people in police academies and fire academies that might need extra time for testing. That can be given. So that's the big thing, is that we have to self-identify. They have to understand their diagnosis. So what a visually impaired student might need, totally different than someone who's deaf of hard of hearing, totally different from someone that has an eating disorder, somebody totally different from an ADHD student. All of those are different. And I'm using student, and we're talking about transition of parent, changing that relationship from parent to child, right?
Right.
Right.
But it's also adult students. As we get older and we say we might want to take some classes, we might be going back to school as an adult. You might be going back to get a certificate. You never went to college, or you want to pick something else up. That's available for you as well. It's not just a traditional college student. It's any student taking classes.
Is this true for private colleges as well?
I'm not 100% sure, but normally, yes. I can't say that for every private school across the country, but normally, yes.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit, because I think one of the hardest things as a parent, when we are, our kiddos doing good through elementary and it's more upper elementary, maybe you're starting to see, them falling behind, or whatever it is that you're seeing. What would you recommend? How do parents handle that? Because I feel like there's so many options, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to go through the school first? Do I go through my doctor? Do I need to go through a counselor? Clear that up a little bit. How would that even look?
It can vary.
And also speak into if you're homeschooling.
Yes.
So those two different ways?
Yeah, so if you're in the public school, a K-12 public school, you need to put in writing that you would like your child tested for special education or special education services. But it has to be in writing, just short, specific. I would send it to your child's teacher, to if they have a special education coordinator and administration. And just short and simple, I am requesting that my student be evaluated for special education services based on inattention in coursework,
Okay.
right? Because
Okay.
grades are not always an indicator.
Right.
Right? So that would be the first way in public school, right?
Okay.
That's going to start a timeline that's laid out in IDEA of things that have to happen, but it has to be in writing. You can't just say it to your teacher in passing,
Okay.
anything like that. It has to be in writing. If you're homeschooling, I would go a different route and I would seek out, let's say you might think your child might have ADHD, some focusing, some inattention, some impulsivity, right? Maybe some anger issues, especially boys as they start to get into adolescence, right? Then I would start with a developmental psychologist or a developmental pediatrician, and I would have them tested for any type of learning disability. But let's say you're seeing issues in reading, that might come much sooner,
Right.
and having your student evaluated for dyslexia, especially if the parent also had reading difficulties, because that tends to be hereditary.
Okay. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So what would be, kind of as we finish up, what would be some of the things that you would, what would you want parents to know, just in a broad sense? What would be some of the things that you would want to be sure, like, I would want these parents to know this?
So as we talk about transitioning from high school to college, first I would want parents to know it's okay, right?
Aw.
We're here to help.
Yes.
Right? That I love those students that come into my classroom. I have students that come by and ask for a hug. They've had a really hard test. They ask me for a hug, like there are people in college that love your babies just as much as you do. So that's number one. It's okay, right?
Yes.
Number two, make sure that your student knows how to advocate for what they need and they understand their diagnosis and they have documentation to prove their diagnosis, whether that is their IEP, their 504, or a letter from their doctor stating what their diagnosis is. And that it's going to be okay. There's going to be help. The only thing we can't do is move backwards in time, right? So if they start college and they're not advocating for themselves, we can't go back and retake those classes. Like that's already done. We can't retake that test. That's done, right?
That's right.
So you want to start early, but you can always start where you're at moving forward. So if they're in college now and they haven't asked for those things, it's not too late. They can still go find their disabilities office and they'll be there to help.
I love that you say it's going to be okay.
It's going to be fine.
Calming people down. Can you tell us, we need it.
We needed that.
Can you tell us just one story as we close of somebody that helps keep you going?
So this is not a college student. So like I said, I taught high school students with intellectual disabilities for 10 years. And there is one student, his name is Anthony. I'm so very, very proud of him. He had severe ADHD to where it caused an intellectual disability due to his focus, and he just wasn't able to focus on anything. So Anthony just started working at a hospital as his first official job, that we worked backwards to that job. So he just became employed. Everybody's employable. There's a purpose for everyone out there. And Anthony has found his purpose working at the hospital, changing light bulbs, the air filters. He has his own cell phone and his tool belt. And I just love Anthony, and I'm so thankful that his parents sought out the special education system, and I was able to be one person to help influence his journey.
I've heard you say several times, everyone has their purpose.
Yeah.
And you're helping them to find it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. Thank you for bringing hope, for bringing help to families today. And I'd like to close this in a word of prayer. Do you mind?
No, I'd love it.
All right. Thank you so much, Lord, for bringing us together and to talk about disabilities. And I just pray that we've been able to encourage families that there's hope. They can make it through this. And so I just pray that some of these pointers will be helpful to our families today. We love you, Jesus. Thank you again. Amen.
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 Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Abundant Life Family Podcast. If you found this helpful for your family, hit like and subscribe below. And feel free to drop a comment or question below. To learn more about the Abundant Life Family Ministry and the 10-mile markers to help you win at building families that last, go to our website at livingproof.co/family.